We left off last week talking about our parallel lines and our perpendicular lines and how their slopes work to help us. And we're going to write equations. So we'll be given an equation of one line, and we're going to be asked to write the equation of another one that's parallel or perpendicular to it. So we got to remember about the things we know about parallel and perpendicular lines. So parallel lines, what's true about their slope? They're the same. They never touch, and their slope is what? The same. Will you box that, circle it, something? Their slopes are the same. They'll never cross, so they rise and run exactly the same. So if my line, let's pretend the purple line was y equals negative 3x plus 2, what would be the slope of the green line? What's it going to be? Negative 3. It'll be the same. It'd be the exact same. So if you know the equation of one of the lines, you know the slope, and so the slope that you would want to use for your line is going to be the same if they're parallel. So we'll be using the same. But perpendicular, when they cross at exactly 90, their slopes aren't the same. They're what we call negative reciprocals, if you'll underline that. That means they have opposite signs and they're flipped over. So 4 over 1 and negative 1 over 4. So if one of my lines, again, let's just pretend the purple one, was this equation, y equals 5/3 x minus 7, what's the slope of this line? Thank you, Jace. 5/3. Yeah, it's 5/3. So Jesse, what would be the perpendicular slope? Good, negative 3 over 5. So you have to pay attention today. If your lines are parallel, you're going to use the exact same slope. If your lines are perpendicular, you have to change its sign and flip it over, and that would be the slope you would use to write the equation of the other line, parallel, perpendicular. Okay, so this is what you're going to be given. You're going to be asked to write the equation in slope-intercept form that's passing through a given point. So here's our point, but it's parallel to this guy. So you've got to pay attention when you box that out. You've got to pay attention if you're parallel or perpendicular because it's going to make a difference on the slope you use. So they're saying, okay, here's a line, y equals 2x plus 5, which would be right about here. And they want you to write an equation that goes through 1, negative 4, and is parallel. So it's got to run side by side. So it's a whole different line. It's going to be parallel to this one. So we've got our point. We just need to know the slope. So look at the equation of the line we know. Camry, what's its slope? 2. So the slope, if we're going to graph a parallel line, or not graph line, write a parallel line, what's the slope we have to use as well? 2. Okay, so that's what we know. Now we have everything we need. We've got slope and a point, so we have to start in point-slope form, because those are the two things we know. Let's plug it in. So I want to hear everybody. Y what? Plus 4 equals what? 2 times x minus 1. X minus 1, good. Okay, then we just solve it. Let's solve it fast. We're going to be so good at these. And minus your 4. So what's the equation of our line? Y equals what? 2x minus 6. So it's parallel because they have the same slope. But this one is up here going through 5, and ours is down here going through 1, negative 4. And there it is. Okay, so second one. We've got our line, and we are supposed to write the equation of a line that goes through this point, but it's going to be parallel to the one they give us. So Emery, tell me the slope of the one that they gave us. Negative 1/3. So if we're going to be parallel, Bentley, what slope do we use? Negative 1/3. Exactly the same. So we just plug it in. Everybody help me out. Y what? Plus 2 equals that negative 1/3. How about more of you? X what? Plus 3. Good. Plus 3. Okay, now that's point slope form. We're supposed to write it in slope intercept form. So we got to distribute, multiply that in. So we get negative 1/3 x. Guys, what's negative 1/3 times 3? Negative 1/3 times 3. Everybody have it? Negative 1. Yep, the 3's will divide out. Yep, and you'll be left with negative 1. Minus your 2. So our line that's perpendicular will be negative 1, not perpendicular, parallel. Negative 1/3 x minus 3. Minus 3. So that one's parallel to this. They have the exact same slope, but ours is going through the point negative 3, negative 2. So when it's parallel, you're going to use the same slope. You'll just have to find the slope from that equation and use the same. Okay, then you're going to be asked to do the same thing, but it's got to be perpendicular. So will you box that? That's where you have to really pay attention today. You got to know if you're doing a perpendicular line or a parallel line because you'll need the correct slope. So again, they're giving us a line and they're saying, okay, here's a line. Now you write a line, write the equation of a line that goes through a different point, but it's got to be perpendicular. We want to know what that equation will be to make our lines cross at exactly 90. So all we need to know, we've got the point that we're going to use. We just need to know the slope of the line. Okay, so the slope. So Avi, what is the slope of the line we know?
1/5.
1/5. So what would be a perpendicular slope to that? Negative 5. Yeah, everybody feel good about that? Negative 5. Okay, then it's just a matter of plugging it in. Y minus 4 equals negative 5 times x minus 2. We need it in slope-intercept form. Hi.
Yep, Chargers.
Over on this, that shelf over there on the bottom shelf.
Thank you.
Okay, multiply that in. Multiply in your negative 5. Add your 4. And you will have the equation of a line that's perpendicular. It's going to cross at a 90. So their slopes are negative reciprocals of each other, and so perfectly crossing at a 90. Any questions on that one? Okay, look at the second information. Here's our point. Here's the line that we have to be perpendicular to. So Lily, what would be the slope that we need to use for a perpendicular? Just on the bottom shelf.
Thanks.
Sorry.
You would use
10 people that didn't
You
One
had to
half,
snatch
yeah.
a charger.
1/2, yes. Okay, so that's the slope we're going to be perpendicular. So y minus, everybody tell me, y what? Y minus 3, how about everybody, times x what? Plus 4, good. Minus negative 4 is going to become plus. Multiply that in. It's fun to times by a half. You guys, what's half of 4? 2. Yeah, you don't even have to think about it. Just take half of it. Half of 4. Add your 3, and you will have the perpendicular line at 1/2 x plus 5. You're going to cross it exactly 90. So your main concern today is to know if you're going to do parallel and use the same slope or perpendicular and do opposite sign flipped over. So you have to watch for that. So let me show you what some of your problems will look like. They'll say, okay, here's a line, and will you guys write it down here so we have a little room? 5x minus 6y equals negative 2, and then you need to write the equation. The equation, does it say slope-intercept form in particular on this one? No. So if you don't want to, you can leave it in point-slope form, which probably would be the easiest. So if it doesn't specifically say slope-intercept form, you can leave it in any form. It doesn't specify it, and so that's okay. So you're going to find the equation that's perpendicular to this line, and it's going through the point 1, negative 4. So I've got my point, I just need to know my slope. Do I know my slope right now? No, your equation has to be in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, so we're going to have to solve it. Marley, what would you do first to get the y by itself? Good, minus your 5x, yes. Gotta get that y by itself. Don't forget the negative that's on the 6. Okay, then, Matthew, what do? Divide everything. You gotta divide all parts by negative 6. If it won't divide, you're gonna leave it as a fraction. What's a negative divided by a negative? Positive. Okay, and then -2 over -6, what does that become? Positive what? 1/3. Yeah, be careful. That's, 2 over 6 is 1/3. But what we really need is the slope. We're not super concerned about the y-intercept right now. We just need the slope. So Coda, what is the slope we just found? Okay, 5, 6. Box that out. That's what we're going to be using. Our first job is to create a perpendicular line with this point. So perpendicular, right here, let's write the slope. What's the slope that's going to be perpendicular to this one? -6/5, right? -6/5. So then all you have to do is use your point. What's it going to look like? Y what? +4 equals our perpendicular slope, -6/5 times x minus 1. And you can leave it. If it just says find an equation, you can be done right there. Unless they say put it in slope-intercept form, you can be done. Now the second part says find an equation that's parallel. So you're using the same point. So you have the basic equation right here. What would you just have to change? The slope. Yeah, if you're parallel, what slope are we going to use? 5, 6. Everybody agree? Yeah, you're going to use the same. So you've already done the hard part and written it. You just now have to put the parallel slope in there, and you're done, because you're using the same point. So as long as you put the numbers in correctly the first time, your second one, you just use the slope that you need. So you have to watch which one's perpendicular, which one's parallel. Any questions about that? If you wanted to multiply that through and put it y equals mx plus b, you can, it'll take it, but it'll also keep that one too, because it just says an equation. So yeah, whatever you decide. Okay, then you'll end up with a few problems like this. So we have to think even a little bit more carefully. This one says, find the equation and the slope of a line that's perpendicular. Will you box that? Perpendicular. So automatically we have to be thinking opposite sign flipped over for our slope. But we're perpendicular to the x-axis. Highlight that somehow. To the x-axis. So here's our x-axis, because it's a horizontal line, right? Will you make that stand out somehow on your paper? The x-axis, it's a horizontal line. What is the slope of all horizontal lines? 0. Okay, the slope of all horizontal lines is 0. We're supposed to write the equation of a perpendicular line. What did we say was always perpendicular with horizontal lines? What's going to be perpendicular to horizontal lines? Be brave. A vertical line. Thank you, Tessa. A vertical line. So if horizontal lines have a slope of 0, what's the slope of all vertical lines? Undefined. Good. Our slope is going to be undefined. Our slope will be undefined. And vertical lines, they have a special equation. We're going through -6, 8. So come over here to -6, just make an 8, put a point there. That's where they want the line, and it's got to be vertical to be perpendicular with the x-axis. It'll be vertical. So the equation of a vertical line, what does it look like? X equals or y equals? Is it x equals or y? X equals. Yeah, and what is the x for every single point on this line? -6. Yes, if you're writing a vertical line, it'll be x equals, and whatever the x is on your point, because every x is -6 on that vertical line. Sometimes you might be writing a horizontal line, that would be y equals, and this one would be 0, because it's going through 0. Okay, so horizontals have slopes that are 0, verticals have slopes that are undefined. So our equation would just be x equals -6, a vertical line. Those are the two that are special. Okay, let's look at another one. Find the equation and slope of the line that's parallel. We box that. So now we're doing parallel. So what's our slope going to be? Same or negative reciprocal? Same. So to the line x equals 8. What kind of a line is x equals 8? We just drew one. What is it? Everybody tell me. Vertical, right? Vertical, and yes, its slope is, yes, it is undefined. You are correct. It's vertical. X equals 8 is vertical, and we're doing parallel, so it's going to be exactly the same. But ours is going to go through -2, -5. So go to -2, -5, and you're going to be vertical through there. So the equation, is it x equals or y equals? X equals, and what x are we going through? -2. I hear 2 people. Any questions I can clear up? Everybody feel good about that? Okay, so verticals are x equals, horizontals are y equals. Okay, all right, next one. Find the equation and the slope of a line that's parallel. So again, we're going to be using the same slope, but now to the y-axis. The y-axis again. Oh, how about more? The y-axis. So we're going parallel and the y-axis. What would be the slope of the y-axis? Abby says undefined, is she right? Yes, so if we're parallel, what's our slope going to be? Undefined. That's just kind of coincidence of the one I picked, you guys. It's not always going to be undefined. I should have looked at them more carefully. I just grabbed them and copied them. But that's just a coincidence. They're not all going to be undefined, so be careful with that. But vertical, we're parallel. We're going to go through 6, -1. So if I come over here to 6, -1, and I've got to be parallel to the y-axis, I'm vertical. So what's the equation going to look like? X or y? X equals what? 6. X equals 6. Sometimes you're going to be doing a horizontal line. I should have looked at them closer. But sometimes you are going to do a horizontal line, and those are going to be y equals. So keep that in mind. And what's the slope of a horizontal line? 0. So watch that. That just happened to be a coincidence that each of these were undefined. You have to look at it carefully and decide. Okay, if you will get a piece of paper for the assignment, please. Grab a sheet of paper. We're on Alex. So the first few, can you fill out your paper first and then you can go. First few are you're just writing that equation. Watch and see if it wants slope-intercept form, then you have to solve for y. But if it just says equation, you can leave it in point slope. You don't have to change it unless it asks you to. So let's just say, write equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. You can abbreviate that however you want to, but writing equations of parallel and perpendicular. So your name, today is the 21st. First period. Okay, so the work today, it'll often just be an equation. But if you have to start with point slope, I want to see that and solve that. If you have to solve the equation for y, make it say y equals mx plus b, I want to see that. And just a reminder, you guys, everything is